If you're looking to get a new Rivian, you have two big options: lease or buy. Before EVs became widely available, almost all new cars sold were direct sales, either by being paid in full or through financing. However, EVs have recently flipped that all on its head. According to data from Edmunds.com, nearly 80% of all new EVs sold are actually leased. Compare that to approximately 20% of gas cars that were leased during the same time period. So, what's going on? Why are so many EV buyers choosing to go with the leasing option? It essentially boils down to three major factors. First is depreciation. All cars depreciate, at least when the market is operating, well, normally. I'm looking at you, 2021 to 2022 car market, but EVs have been shown to depreciate way faster than gas cars. Thankfully, Rivians have held up better so far versus the rest of the EV market. The Rivian R1S and R1T have even led the pack compared to their category peers. For example, a 2022 Rivian R1S depreciated roughly 27% after the first 3 years, compared to a 2022 Tesla Model X, which depreciated roughly 60% after 3 years. That's basically double the depreciation for the Tesla. Ouch. A significant contributor here is the more competitive pricing of EVs today from most manufacturers compared to just a few years ago. But even the better deal EVs are depreciating faster than their gas-powered counterparts. When you lease, the residual value of the car is decided the day that you sign the paperwork. This means if the car is worth more than the residual amount, you can often buy it out at a discount compared to its actual market value. However, if it's worth less than that amount, you can turn the vehicle in and simply walk away. More often than not, people are finding the residual values are higher than the real world value, and so they're able to walk away from the vehicle after just a few years without taking a huge financial bath and instead leaving it on the company, in this case Rivian, to deal with it. Second is tax credits. While the core issue of tax credits is constantly evolving, there's currently a leasing loophole that can lower a vehicle cost by up to $7,500. By leasing, vehicles or buyers that wouldn't have otherwise qualified for a tax credit can enjoy a discount that is paid out directly to the manufacturer. Now look, I'm not here to argue the pros or cons of that being a thing, but the point is that it is a thing, and it's something you should consider as a buyer. If your overall price can be lowered by $7,500, you would only be rational for considering it as a real option. There are, of course, more localized incentives to consider, but the federal one here is the most applicable to the most people. Third is rapidly changing technology. Rivian and most EVs are essentially software-defined computers on wheels, and we're still fairly early in the innovation cycle for EVs. That means things like battery tech, charging speeds, and cost of production are rapidly evolving. The rate at which EVs are improving is far quicker than the more mature and frankly stale gas-powered car market. Just consider how much better the iPhone 4 was compared to the original iPhone, and now consider how the rate of improvement has slowed down a lot for smartphones. EVs are still in the early phase when the improvements can be dramatic over the course of just a few model years. Heck, look at the difference between the Gen 1 Rivians and Gen 2. While not everything is an obvious improvement, we've seen big leaps in camera quality and driver assistance compute capacity, all while reducing the cost of production for Rivian by tens of thousands of dollars. So, should almost everyone just lease a Rivian versus buy? Well, maybe, and also maybe not. While every person will have a unique situation, things like, are you buying this for a business? Are you planning a big expensive trade-in? Etc. The primary thing blocking most people from leasing ends up mostly being just unfamiliar with the variables. Sometimes Rivian will offer stronger incentives to buy, and sometimes the deals are better to lease. Let's walk through some of the different costs associated with a lease to help you make a better comparison. First is leasing fees. Leases have some unique fees to consider compared to a more traditional purchase. Things like acquisition fee, disposition fee, excess mileage, excess wear and tear, documentation, administrative, and early termination fees. The end result of fees means that even if you put $0 down, you'll still be responsible for a few $1,000s in order to get your lease started. Next is sales tax. While not applicable to every location, most states allow you to just pay the sales tax on the depreciation amount of the vehicle. This could be quite significant and really reduce the amount of sales tax that you're responsible for overall. Next is the money factor or interest rate. The money factor is one of the more confusing aspects at just how much a lease costs to most people. When leasing, the cost is presented as a money factor and must be calculated to see what your true interest rate really is. If you take the money factor and multiply it by 2,400, you'll get the effective interest rate. Showing you a real-world Rivian lease example, thanks Reddit, can really help you better understand how costly the interest rates can truly be when leasing a Rivian. There are going to be a lot of numbers here, but just bear with me and it will all make sense at the end. In this example, the Rivian has an MSRP of $93,350. The capitalized cost was reduced by $8,500. Most of that is thanks to the tax credit I mentioned earlier. This puts the adjusted capitalized cost at $84,850 thanks to the $8,500 capitalized cost reduction. Rivian then set the residual value at $56,394.50 at the end of the 36-month term. This means a vehicle that lists for over $93,000 would be effectively worth only $56,000 at the end of just 3 years. The buyer then has the option at the end of the 36 months to purchase the vehicle outright for roughly $56,000, or simply return the vehicle for the disposition fee, which is normally a few $100. But here's where things get a little spicy. In this example, Rivian has a rent charge listed of $15,610.30 for the length of the 36-month term. That means that $433.62 of the total lease payment per month is effectively interest. If you use that $433.62 and divide it by the sum of the adjusted capitalized cost and the residual value, you get what's called the money factor. The money factor in this example is about 0.00307. Multiply that by 2,400 and you'll see that Rivian is effectively charging 7.368% APR on this particular lease deal. That's kind of a lot. So when should you buy instead of lease? While leasing can make sense for way more people than ever before, there is still a case to be made for a more traditional purchase. Depending on what Rivian is motivated to do, they may offer more compelling incentives specifically for buying. This could be in the way of increased values for trade-ins, lowered interest rates, or even free upgrades when purchasing certain models. For example, since we were really early pre-order holders, it was a better deal at the time for us to buy than it was to lease. Other times, it's just a matter of interest rates. As we saw in the real-world example, the effective interest rate was quite high, so it's easy to see how a low interest rate offer to buy could quickly level the playing field or even tip it in favor of buying instead of leasing. Then you have the mileage limits for leases. If you drive a lot, specifically way more than 15,000 miles per year, which tends to be the upper limit of lease mileage caps, then buying your Rivian may make more sense so you aren't paying the per mile overage fee at the end of your term. In general though, I think that leasing actually makes much more sense for the majority of people. Now, let's talk about how leases can be artificially sweetened. When Rivian wants to move a lot of cars quickly, one of their biggest levers is an attractive lease deal. We saw this in 2024 when they were motivated to blow out the last of the Gen 1 vehicles leading up to the Gen 2 launch. In order to make these deals extremely attractive, Rivian often focuses on two main variables. One is significantly raising the residual value. By setting the residual value a lot higher than Rivian actually expects the car to be valued at the end of the term, it means that the depreciation they are asking you to pay for has been lowered, often considerably, leading to a far less expensive lease deal. Two is lowering the money factor. On top of the residual value, Rivian can influence the money factor to dictate how expensive the financing is on the term. A high residual value coupled with a low money factor means a lease deal's so good you'd be crazy not to lease. Here are some leasing tips. When seriously considering a lease versus financing deals, here are a few important things to know. 1. Put as little money down as you possibly can. A weird thing about a lease is that putting more money down is basically just prepaying your rent on the vehicle, and it comes with one very important downside. If the car gets totaled, you don't get any of that money back. So it's generally accepted that you want to put as little money down on the vehicle as possible, even if that means your monthly payment ends up being higher. 2. If you're essentially 100% certain that you want to buy out the car, do it sooner in the lease versus later. As we covered earlier in the real-world example, that rent charge can add up to be quite a lot. In the real-world example, it was over $15,000, but that's if you pay over the entire term. If you are extremely confident that you're going to want to buy out your Rivian at the end of the term, it's worth trying to buy it out ASAP. Doing this after, say, 1 month could mean a rent charge of about $433 instead of over $15,000 if you waited to the end of the term. The price of the car will reflect the same period of depreciation, so it will be a lot closer to the initial price of the vehicle, but in the case of the tax advantage, you'd still net the savings from the tax credit and potentially be better off. So you could potentially lease a vehicle and score the $7,500 tax advantage for your time and effort that you wouldn't otherwise qualify for. Just something to consider if you're confident that you absolutely want to own this particular Rivian. Third is make sure you use a referral code. Rivian has a referral program that you can get points to use in their gear shop. These points are great for picking up accessories like floor mats, roof racks, or wall chargers, and more. You can use my link down in the description if you want to support the channel and get those points for yourself for use in the gear shop. At the end of the day, there's no reason you shouldn't be using a referral code. It's basically free money on the lease or purchase that you're going to be doing anyway. Lastly, always try to work with a sales advisor. Rivian sales advisors can help pair you with inventory that you may not see as readily available in the R1 shop, but will be available soon because it's already in transit. Or they may know about additional offers that Rivian can do that aren't advertised on their website. The best part is you can still use a referral code for those bonus gear shop points even when you're working with a sales advisor to secure your perfect configuration. I hope you found this video helpful. Drop a comment down below. Are you planning to lease or buy your Rivian? And if you're going with the lease, will this be the first vehicle you've ever leased? If so, you won't be alone given the significant uptick in EVs that are being leased. Thank you so much for being here and taking the time to watch. Until next time, stay curious.